This isn't just a story. This is a confession, whispered by a king who had the world at his feet, who built a city to touch the heavens, and who believed he was a god, until he became a beast. And in that terrifying, humiliating, and utterly complete transformation, he found a truth that shocked the world. Before you see a single frame of Nebuchadnezzar, the movie, 2026, the complete biblical movie that's about to change everything, you need to understand something no one talks about. This is not a tale of a hero's journey. It's a raw, brutal, and profoundly healing account of a man who lost everything, only to find a grace so immense it shattered his entire identity. Why was this king, the greatest who ever lived, driven into the wilderness to eat grass like an ox? What was he truly searching for in that desolate, forgotten place? And could the deep, resonant, and healing truth that has been hidden for centuries actually be the key to unlocking a powerful, unstoppable grace within your own soul? In this video, we're not just exploring a historical figure. We're going to step into the broken heart of a king, witness his complete psychological and spiritual transformation, and discover the secrets that will change the way you see power and surrender forever. Don't forget to hit that like button to spread this powerful message to others who are searching for their own healing, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of this incredible journey. This story is for you. I was born for this. My hands were made to hold a scepter, my voice to command legions. My name, Nebuchadnezzar, was a roar that echoed across the desert sands, a name that made kings tremble and empires fall. I was the heir to a fledgling empire my father had carved from the ruins of Assyria, but I was destined to forge it into a legend. My destiny was written not in scrolls, but in the fire in my veins and the unyielding certainty in my heart. The battlefield was my canvas, and with every victory I painted a new masterpiece. I could hear the clang of swords, the thunder of 1,000 chariots, the defiant shouts of my men, and the terrified cries of my enemies. The thrill of conquest was a current of pure, intoxicating power that coursed through my veins, and I chased it with a hunger that could never be satisfied. I marched my armies to the gates of Jerusalem, a city considered impregnable, the seat of a god I did not yet understand. I felt the very earth tremble as my siege engines battered its walls, and when they finally crumbled, I felt not just the triumph of a king, but the ecstatic pride of a god. I had conquered a city, I had taken its people captive, and I believed I had even subdued their god. My greatest creation, however, was not won on the battlefield. It was built from the earth up, a monument to my own divine will, Babylon, a city so grand it was a living myth. Every stone was laid with a purpose, every brick inscribed with my name. The walls, so thick 2 chariots could race atop them, were not just for defense. They were a declaration of my invincibility, a permanent seal on my greatness. The Ishtar Gate, shimmering in azure blue, blazed with sculpted dragons and lions, living symbols of my power that announced my dominion to all who approached. The air was filled with the sounds of chisels striking stone, of hammers shaping gold, and the shouts of thousands upon thousands of laborers, all working tirelessly to build my vision. The hanging gardens, a marvel of engineering, a living mountain of green in the heart of the desert, were a cascading miracle of verdant flora and flowing water. I commanded my finest engineers and most skilled artisans to build this tribute for my homesick queen, who longed for the hills of her homeland. but in the quiet moments of my own heart, I knew it was not for her alone. It was a testament to my ability to command nature, to bend reality to my will. It was the ultimate, arrogant proclamation. I am the master of all things, and my glory will never fade. My pride wasn't a flaw. It was my fuel. It was the fire that made me a living legend. It was the whisper in my ear that told me I was not just a king among men, but a living God. And that whisper, I would soon discover, was the poison that would drive me to madness. The first crack in my perfect reality came in the form of a dream. A vision so vivid, so terrifying, it shook me from my sleep with a cold sweat that clung to my royal robes. It was of a colossal statue, towering over the earth. Its head was of pure, shimmering gold, its chest of silver, its waist of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet a brittle mix of iron and clay. The statue was majestic, a vision of power, but there was a fragility to it that terrified me. Then a small stone, cut from a mountain without a human hand, came hurtling through the air and struck the statue's feet, shattering it into a fine dust that was carried away by the wind. I commanded my wisest men to interpret it, but they failed. They could not even tell me the dream itself, let alone its meaning. They cowered before me, their empty words mocking my command. I felt my fury rise, cold and sharp. What good are wise men who cannot divine the future of their king? I ordered them all executed, their lives meaningless in the face of my frustration. It was then that Daniel, a young Hebrew captive, appeared. There was no fear in his eyes, only a quiet, unwavering faith. He told me the dream was not his, and the interpretation was not his either. It was a revelation from a higher power. That the great statue was my kingdom, and the kingdoms that would follow, all of them destined to be crushed by a final, eternal kingdom, a kingdom made not by human hands. He told me my power was temporary, a fleeting shadow. I was stunned. For a brief, intoxicating moment, I knelt before him, before his God. I was humbled by the sheer weight of a truth so immense it felt physical. I honored Daniel and promoted him to the highest ranks. But my pride was a deep, ancient river. It could not be stopped with a single act of humility. It was just a pause. I had a taste of a power greater than my own, but I still believed I could outrun it, outsmart it, outconquer it. I believed I was the exception. And so my heart rebelled. I would prove them all wrong. I would prove that my kingdom was not just temporary, but eternal. I commanded a statue to be built, not of gold and silver, but of pure gold from head to toe. A breathtaking 90-foot monument to my glory. My will was the law. I decreed that when the music played, every human being, every leader, every soldier in my realm must fall and worship this golden effigy. This wasn't just a political decree, it was a spiritual test, a test of my total absolute authority. But 3 men, 3 Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, dared to defy me. They stood, a defiant monument of faith against the backdrop of my golden pride. In a cold, seething rage, I ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. I would show them what happens when you challenge a king who is a god. And yet, when they were thrown into the flames, something changed. I stared into the fire, ready to watch them burn, and saw them not consumed, but walking in the midst of the roaring blaze. With them was a fourth figure, whose form was like a son of the gods. My heart pounded against my ribs. My mind, which had always been so sure, so certain, began to question everything. I called them out, and they emerged, their clothes unsinged, not even smelling of smoke. My power had no dominion over this divine fire. I was shaken, but I wasn't healed. The lesson, I realized later, wasn't about the fire. It was about the presence in the fire, the one who walked with them. It was a glimpse of a healing presence that I would need to find for myself. I gave a second decree, a second confession, praising their God. But my heart was still locked in its cage of pride. I believed in his power, yes, but I still believed in my own more. I still believed my gold was more powerful than their faith. The final stroke of judgment came on a day when my kingdom seemed to be at its most magnificent. I walked on the roof of my palace, a king gazing upon his masterpiece. The city of Babylon stretched out before me in a shimmering expanse of gold and light. The weight of my own genius, my own ambition, felt like a physical presence, a warm cloak of invincibility. I looked out over the empire I had built, and I felt the sweet, intoxicating rush of total control. My voice, filled with an arrogance so deep it was almost beautiful, spoke the words of my heart. Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty? I truly believed it. I was the architect of my own destiny, the source of my own power. And at that very moment, a voice from the heavens, a voice that was both a thunderclap and a whisper, spoke. It was the voice of the king I had forgotten, the God who had promised a kingdom that would never end. It told me that my own kingdom was taken from me, that I would be driven from the company of men and live with the wild animals, eating grass like an ox. The world as I knew it shattered. The ground under my feet felt like it was crumbling. My mind, my reason, my very sense of self began to unravel. The world went from glorious color to a terrifying primal blur. My skin felt coarse. My hands felt alien. My hair grew long and tangled like the feathers of an eagle, my nails like the claws of a bird. I was a man trapped in a beast's body, a king living in a hollowed-out soul. My mind, once so sharp, so cunning, was now clouded with a deep and maddening haze. My body, once draped in the finest robes, was now covered in the dirt and dew of the field. My royal palace became a den, my golden throne a grassy knoll. I tasted the wild earth and the bitter herbs, not as a choice, but as the only reality I knew. The 7 years that followed were not just a punishment. They were a cleansing, a raw, brutal, and profoundly healing process that stripped me of every ounce of pride, of every illusion of control. I was a wild animal, driven by instinct, living in a profound and utter loneliness. My memory, once a vast library of conquests and decrees, became a fragmented chaos. The faces of my queens and children were phantoms. The sound of my own name, a faint echo. I learned a new kind of silence, the silence of the wilderness, of the stars above, of the earth below. It was here, in this solitude, that I had nowhere to run from myself. There was no court, no sycophants, no city to command. Just me, and the infinite, terrifying void of my own lost soul. I ached for a warmth I could not name. I cried out for a comfort that never came. My body grew strong from the hardship, but my soul was a hollowed-out shell, echoing with the pain of a man who had forgotten who he was. And yet, in that complete and total emptiness, in that moment of absolute surrender, the first seeds of a new life, a new kingdom within, began to take root. The glory of Babylon had to fall, so that the glory of God could rise. My suffering was the chisel that carved away the useless, arrogant parts of my soul, leaving behind something pure and true. The whispers of the wind began to sound like a gentle voice, the rustling of the leaves like a song of peace. The world, once my possession, was now my home, and I, the king, was just another creature in it. The transformation was gradual, agonizingly slow. I watched the seasons change, and with them my perspective. I learned to find shelter not in a palace, but under the canopy of trees. I found food not on a royal table, but in the bounty of the earth. And in that simplicity, a profound peace began to settle over my soul. The pride that had once consumed me now seemed as absurd as a child's tantrum. I, Nebuchadnezzar, the builder of great Babylon, was brought to my knees not by an army, but by a divine whisper. And in that humbling, I finally understood. The source of my power was never my own. The kingdom was never mine to begin with. The grace I sought was always there, waiting for me to surrender. And one day, a single powerful thought broke through the haze of my madness. I lifted my head. My eyes, once fixed on the ground like a beast, were now fixed on the heavens. It was a simple act, a silent prayer, but it changed everything. My sanity was restored. My humanity returned. I was still a king, but I was a new man. A man who understood that his greatest victory was not on the battlefield, but in the quiet, humble surrender of his heart. The journey back to my palace was a pilgrimage. I was not a king returning to his throne. I was a man returning to his humanity. And the final confession I left for the world was not a testament to my power, but a hymn to the one who had brought me back from the brink. And so, here we are, at the end of the journey. The story of Nebuchadnezzar is not about a king who lost a kingdom, but about a soul who found salvation. I returned to my throne a different man. The mind that had unraveled in madness was restored, but it was filled with a new wisdom, a new light. The years in the wilderness, the shame, the loneliness, they were not a punishment, but a profound emotional healing. My hair returned, my nails became human again, but most importantly, my heart became human again. I had built a kingdom of gold, but I had returned to build a kingdom of humility and love. The true king, the one I had defied for so long, had reached down into the mud and the grass and pulled me back to life. My final decree, the words I left for all the world to read, were not a boast of my power, but a hymn to his. I praise the King of heaven, whose works are truth and whose ways are justice. I testified that he is able to humble those who walk in pride. And in that simple, powerful confession, I found a freedom I had never known on the throne. My story isn't just about me. It's about you. It's about every time you've built your own kingdom, every time you've trusted in your own power, every time you felt lost or broken. The wilderness I wandered was real, but it's also a metaphor for the wilderness we all face in our own lives. It's the loneliness of the late nights, the anxiety that keeps you up, the shame of mistakes you can't forget. It's the moment your world feels like it's falling apart. The good news, no matter how far you've fallen, no matter how lost you feel, there is a voice waiting to call you back. There is a healing you can find in your own moment of surrender. There is a God who can bring you back from the brink, just as he did for me. So, what is your Babylon? What is the thing you are clinging to, and what is the confession you need to make to find your freedom? Let me know in the comments below. We are a community of truth seekers and storytellers, and your voice is a crucial part of this healing journey. If this video has brought a flicker of light to your soul or helped you find a moment of peace amidst the chaos, I invite you to invest a little energy to help me continue sharing these powerful biblical stories. Your support, no matter how small, is a priceless gift that fuels this ministry and allows me to create more content that brings God's word to life. It's an investment in stories that heal, in a community that uplifts, and in a message that reminds us we are never truly alone. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here, for being part of this story. And remember to hit that like and subscribe button to join our family.